Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Praveen Srikhande, and I head digital and technology at Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail, one of the largest retailers in India. And we have brands like Pantaloons, Louis Philippe, Van Heusen that many of you would have heard of. I'd like to welcome you to what I expect to be a very insight-driven India Fashion Forum virtual panel with some very eminent panelists from the fashion industry. And this is powered by the Instituto Marangoni. And as you would be aware, Instituto Marangoni Mumbai has always striven to nurture emerging and talent with the objective of promoting creativity and innovation in design. And since Marangoni Mumbai campus was launched in 2017, they began enrollment for the UG and PG courses in fashion design, fashion styling, and the fashion business. It has facilitated conversations for students and community with some of the sharpest minds in the industry, so as to create a dialogue and understand the ground realities of innovation in the space of fashion and luxury and technology. Of course, India Fashion Forum is a well-known fashion industry community partner. It's the largest fashion retail intelligence platform over 20 years plus since its inception. This exciting fashion business event has grown and evolved to become India's largest annual fashion retail intelligence congregation with a fantastic blend of world-class ideas, leaders, products, innovations, and insights. Unfortunately, in the current situation, the forum itself has become virtual. And I know me as well as all of my colleagues here on the panel, it's a different experience talking to you, knowing that you're there, but not really being able to see you. But I'm sure we'll try to make the best of it in the current situation. So let me kick off the program. I would like to introduce the panel that I have here, starting with Abdullah Abu Milhim. Abdullah is the program leader for fashion business at the Instituto Marangoni in London. Abdullah, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Abdullah Abu Milhim. So I'm the program leader of postgraduate business courses at Instituto Marangoni. And I've been working for the school for nearly 11 years now. Previous to my current role, I was working in the financial sector. Working also closely with luxury and fashion brands and in investment banking and also in hedge funds. And my specialty or my research interests evolve around the relationship between technology, fashion, and also wealth management and finance. Very broad, and looking forward to speaking to you and discuss a very important topic that is shaping our fashion industry at the moment. So I hope you enjoy.
Thanks, Abdullah. Second panelist I would like to introduce is Abhishek Sudhakar, who's the Senior Director and Head of Men's Apparel, Wear and Sports at Myntra. Earlier he was National Brand Manager at Titan for Fastrack. Abhishek, would you like to introduce yourself briefly, please?
Thanks, Praveen. Hi, everybody. Abhishek from Myntra. As already mentioned, I take care of the men's apparel, footwear, and sports portfolios for Myntra. I've been with Myntra for close to 6 years, so I've been a little fortunate enough to be part of some of its formative years. And I've kind of seen fashion e-commerce evolve, I would say pre-COVID safely now, because I think post-COVID, the world has changed again completely. And yeah, excited to be here. A lot of interesting things to talk about. Happy to be part of this panel.
Thanks, Abhishek. My next panelist is Pankaj Singh. He's Director, National Chain Stores and E-commerce at Levi's. Pankaj, a brief introduction from you.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Praveen. Hi, everyone. My name is Pankaj Singh. I head e-commerce for India for Levi's Strauss & Company. I also look after the department store business in India. I've worked in the apparel and fashion retail for over 20 years. and worked across, different channels, category management, brand management. And I've had the privilege for working for companies like Reliance Trends, Arvind, and Raymond. It's a privilege to be on this panel and share what our journey has been before COVID came and what it will be like going forward.
Thanks, Pankaj. And my next panelist is Piyush Chauhan. Piyush is the Group CIO at the Lulu Group International, based out of Abu Dhabi. But of course, he's been a veteran in the fashion field, been in India for a number of years. So Piyush, a brief introduction from your end.
Thank you, Praveen. Good evening, everyone. I think it's quite exciting to be part of this. In terms of my experience, obviously, it has been predominantly retail all over, and with spots of fashion retail in the middle. So I've worked with Arvind. I've worked in managing some of the fashion business for retailers like Tesco for a little while. In all, I would say I have a passion of working in digital and retail combined, and look at ways and by which technology can be implemented in a more innovative way across the retail landscape.
Thanks, Piyush. So I think let's kick off by seeing what is it that has changed in e-commerce, right? See, the world over in fashion retail, the share of e-commerce has been growing. In certain countries like, let's say, the Western world, US, UK, it's got close to about 20 to 25% of fashion retail happens on e-commerce. In a country like China, it is almost close to 40%, right? Over the last 5 years, it's been literally grown from 5 to 10% to almost 40% plus. And while in India, we have not seen that trend being that sharply moving towards e-commerce, though no doubt players like Myntra and other marketplaces have taken leadership in the area, and many of them have a larger fashion retail business than some of the traditional retailers. But still, overall, when you look at the fashion retail market, till last year, it was maybe about 8 to 10% of the business. So that's one trend. And the question is this a trend that will continue or change? That's one of the things that we would like to discuss. The other is the share of the players. So largely what you've seen is in the Western markets, there are dominant marketplaces like Amazon who've been growing very rapidly, especially in the US. In Europe, it's been a mixed story with marketplaces plus retailers, fashion retailers such as ASOS, and various brands opening up their own e-commerce retail and playing there well. And of course, certain large retailers still holding their own in the e-commerce space on their own. In China, it's become pretty much a Alibaba-led story, but Alibaba almost has become the internet for fashion retail. In India, again, for fashion retail, a large share is with marketplaces. Brands on their own have started, made a few things, but still, by and large, it's a marketplace play. So what I would like to ask my panelists is their views on how they see the trends in e-commerce in fashion retail. So let me start with Abdullah to give your perspective on how it has been in the UK, which will be a good starting point for us. Abdullah, you're mute.
When it comes to e-commerce, I think we are seeing a new reshaping of e-commerce. There has been lots of talks lately about whether e-commerce in its current form is dying, and people have been making big suggestions around that. However, what we've been seeing at the moment is a new version of e-commerce, an e-commerce that is largely driven and affected by new trends around consumption, experience, and personalization. So technology has been sitting at the heart of all this and raising these big questions about what sort of e-commerce we've been seeing in the future. So we've started to see some brands engaging with big concepts like e-commerce, where e-commerce becomes a little bit more automated or augmented. And, we started seeing that feeding into the store's experience, but also in the way brands are approaching their relationship with consumers. So we've been seeing e-commerce brands trying to find some strategies on how to feed some sort of personalization and experiential strategies into their e-commerce offering. It's very challenging for brands to do it because it goes hardly into aspects of business model and value chain, and you need to go through digital transformation sometimes to do it. And I think it's a very diverse picture. So in Europe, this is happening across the store, less across the online, unless the brand is engaging a lot with concepts of virtual experiences across online channels. So this is still very, very early stages, but across the physical stores, we've been seeing integration between technology experience, personalization, and the offline versus online relationship. So this is where we stand at the moment. And if you look around the world, it's very different, diverse pictures across wherever you look like. UK, I think UK and US were high street, more than luxury brands. They have been putting lots of effort in that lately. With luxury brands, it's still a little bit big question marks in terms of where they want to go and how far they want to go with the new versions of e-commerce, mostly because there are implications on storytelling and also things that they usually do in terms of value and equity. So high street is more courageous on it, and mostly with the fast fashion brands. But one thing I can probably say, if we can use Hermes as an example of luxury, maybe I can identify as the brand that is currently at the moment combining various aspects of e-commerce with physical expansion with experiential stores. And I think that's a new strategy setting as an example for many brands in case they want to engage with it. So for me, they are the one that they are taking this to a next level now. And we're going to see more brands getting into that as well. Yeah.
What do you see? Has COVID changed anything? I mean, of course, you hear of a lot of bankruptcies in high street and so on happening in the Western world, right? So has COVID is anyway going to change something drastically in, let's say, markets in the Western world? Do you see that happening?
I think when it comes to COVID, it's it's largely correlated to whether we actually know how long this crisis is going to continue. I mean, there are various opinions on this, and obviously, in my point of view, we probably have a little bit bigger expectations in terms of how COVID is going to reset the whole fashion system. We are seeing some examples that the fashion system didn't really reset itself, but maybe it's facing some changes in terms of how people see fashion. So we're getting the voices of sustainability becoming more stronger, and this is pushing brands to become a little bit more engaging with their consumers on that. On the other side, you have the consumer who is not fully encouraged to go to the stores and feeling safe to go to the stores. So this has really pushed e-commerce higher. And this has been really quite a strange situation because pre-COVID-19, we were seeing a lot of evidence that younger generation going back to the stores, setting a different trends to what the millennials were doing before. And the brands were actually surprised by it. And some of them saw the opportunity and started straight away trying to implement strategies around store experience because they thought this is maybe a new thing starting in fashion. So COVID completely reversed that. And I think the big question is, after we are out of this crisis, are we going to go back to see people going back to the stores or the brands going more experiential and getting into that more? So I think this is a topic we will be discussing today as well. Yeah.
Clearly, as Abdullah was saying, the length of the impact of COVID will probably have a role to play in how much it impacts retail. And Middle East, probably it's not been that long. It's been maybe a month and a half. So are you seeing any change in trends? I mean, in general, what the trend towards e-commerce is in the GCC, and are you seeing any change in that coming about?
what COVID has done is predominantly accelerated the adoption of e-commerce. Now, obviously, what has happened is what we have seen is there were at least 80 to 90% of the customers that we saw who are shopping never shopped with us pre-COVID, which means that there is a large new user base which is getting and tasting the success of e-commerce. Now, obviously, I don't think that it is a permanent change, but still, I would believe that the convenience factor would be something that people would be looking at. Having said that, in particular to fashion, obviously, lifestyle itself is going to change, and I think people have to realize it's not about shopping, but the lifestyle itself is going to change. And people are saying in at least large parts of the Western world, they are saying they have extended working from home till middle of next year. It is a very long period of time. It is almost 15 months, which is equal to almost a new season design period. So you would know, Praveen, that we must be designing for kind of autumn winter of 2021. Now, how do you do that? And what are the trends that you pick in, wherein everybody is sitting at home, everybody is trying to figure out what it is. So these are the things in terms of how the lifestyle is changing is going to determine a lot of these trends. Acceleration towards e-commerce is a no-brainer. I think it will happen. But the way you assort the product, the way you do designing, whether really high-end luxury fashion is going to be the same as pre-COVID and post-COVID, are more value and kind of needed product going to be more in terms of the basket which the customers are going to choose. So these are the questions that a lot of these fashion retailers are talking about. And I think the only way to overcome this is to make your design process, make your supply chain so nimble and so slim, so that you are not bogged down in which you predict a certain pattern in autumn winter 21 and then you get stuck and then you have nowhere to go. I think that is where the fashion industry needs to evolve, and we'll talk about how technology will play a very, very important role in terms of modernizing this fashion supply chain so that we are able to respond to these changes much faster.
Absolutely. I think the way we manage our cycles, 6-monthly cycle, yearly cycle in some cases, was going to change significantly with this. Coming to you, Abhishek, what did you see? I mean, you are at the forefront of it, right? In India, especially, which is impacted for the last 4 months and likely to be impacted probably for 4 more months. A lot of consumers have discovered e-commerce, and fashion and retail may be a little bit late, but pretty much from the first month of lockdown, people started moving to groceries and pharmacy on e-commerce. So have you seen that trend at Myntra, and how do you see that progressing over the years? So has your business plan changed completely? Are you thinking that your business will grow maybe twice the speed at which it was growing earlier?
Yeah, Praveen, I think it's a very interesting mix for 2 reasons. One, I believe pre-COVID, e-commerce was seen not as a convenience channel, but more as a discovery / discount channel, right? Usually customers who used to come on to, even for fashion e-commerce or even for non-fashion e-commerce, people always used to come because they just thought they would get a better deal. And if you look at the way our e-commerce is structured in India, we have actually made significant investments in supply chain. What I mean by that is today, for example, in the off chance that there is a new customer that comes out of a PIN code that has never been served by any e-commerce channel before. So India has roughly 23,000 PIN codes, right? Myntra services 22,495 out of that, right? So even if somebody from the corners of India does order, we had actually invested significantly into our supply chain to be ready to service it. So what is happening was supply chain was far ahead of demand. And demand was, we were spending actively on marketing, doing celebrity endorsements, doing all of those things to kind of get the demand to shape up. What has happened post-COVID is that we have gone from being a channel of discovery and discount to a channel of convenience. And we are seeing that even like you said in the stuff that people buy. So for example, obviously fashion e-commerce wasn't the first to revive, obviously. It was all electronics. It was, the real essential services, pharmacy, medicine, electronics. When fashion did start bouncing back, which I think was around the middle of May is when we started seeing this huge upsurge in demand. Our biggest problem was a problem at Flip. Our supply chain was completely not prepared. So our highest acquisition was happening from tier 2, tier 3 towns, right? Which is where people were for the first time trying e-commerce. Our average delivery tax have now tripled because every time a good has to go from, let's say, Bangalore warehouse to even Bombay in Maharashtra, there are so many more checkpoints. There is COVID checkpoints. So this movement of goods has become a huge, bottleneck. And because of that, for the first time, I think at least the history that I've seen in e-commerce, demand is superseding supply, right? And the ability to serve. So I think that is one very interesting change. The other thing I think that we see, and similar to what Piyush had also pointed out, is that there are many brands that have been able to quickly turn around, let's say, loungewear, right? Because of this whole work from home, culture. Like, for example, I haven't bought jeans in 3 months now. I used to buy jeans every 2-3 months, right? I haven't bought jeans in 3 months. I mean, I don't want to accept the fact that I haven't worn one either, but I haven't bought jeans in 3 months. So like that, a lot of consumers are actually buying so much more casual t-shirts and shorts that we are out in categories that we never used to take bets on and were inherently smaller parts of our business. And we're actually we are struggling to get demand for categories which were inherently larger before, like footwear, for example, has taken a huge hit, right? Casual footwear, people just don't want anymore because they're not going to office, they're not going out with their friends, they're not going to meet anyone. They're just very happy buying flip-flops. So flip-flops, we're stocked out. Whatever stock we had, we're completely stocked out and we're struggling to get more stock. Casual shoes, we're not selling at all. And now we're having to, try and figure out other ways to sell that. So it's completely flipped. It's become a mirror image of what it was pre-COVID, both from what we are selling and where the consumer is coming in from. But it's a very interesting, and I keep telling this to everybody internally at least, it's almost like we are trying to reinvent how Myntra was built for so many years, right? All of our precedents are wrong now, right? We used to say, oh no, we will always sell more of this brand than that brand. Completely opposite now. Oh no, we will always have more business coming in from tier 1 towns. Completely opposite now. Oh no, we will deliver all products within 2 days. Completely opposite now. So I think everything is flipped. But I'm hoping that at some point that people will start using e-commerce as a channel of convenience permanently, rather than just a channel of finding deals and discounts and everything else. That's a little bit more structured.
Yeah. Digital when it comes to the fashion retail business, or in general in retail business. So Piyush, maybe I'll take that up with you. You've seen various formats of retail, both fashion and now you're in grocery. How key is technology and digital for retail in general and fashion retail particularly?
Yeah, and I think that is one of the big learning of COVID is that the movement of customer towards transactional points of commerce is no longer needed. Yeah, and that is what is the need of the hour. And every retailer is now thinking. Although I think in the last 5, 8, 10 years, people have been talking that we need to move to experiential retail. We need to move to experiential retail. We need to be having much more richer interactions with the customer. But I think most of it, to be honest, we're still giving lip service. They're not doing it to the heart of it. And that I think is a big realization with a lot of retailers, that how can you make that, and as Mr. Pankaj was talking about, how can we create a digital first story? Yeah, it is not a story in which you have a very traditional model in which you put in some gadgets to make it look like it's a digital model. It is not. You have to make a digital first operational model, a digital first customer engagement model, and then obviously you put in a lot of offerings on the store. So I believe that if you look at the entire fashion supply chain, right from the way the whole product design is done, the way you do road shows, the way you do sourcing, the way you do assortment and planning of merchandise in the stores, all have to be kind of relooked at with a slightly newer lens. You cannot have this 44, 50, 60 weeks of kind of fashion cycle and still believe that you will be able to be nimble, you will be able to be more related to your customer choices and so forth. So I think it is time that I think you are mentioning, Praveen, about doing digital roadshows, right? Pre-COVID, there were a lot of people who were, this technology or this thought process was there for a very long time. But it is the apprehension of a lot of these brand guys to say that whether the buyers will actually appreciate it or not. Although a lot of things are happening in the US, but I think it is now time for people to be more aggressive in terms of adopting this digital first solutions, and then obviously pad it up with the little amount of touch, little amount of convenience on top of it, to basically create a story which is more around experience, more around engagement, rather than having more around transaction. And as you would know, right, in all these things is good to speak as a concept. You can do this only when you have very rich data. Yeah, so digital roadshows can happen only when you have a digital connect with your buyers. If you know whom to connect, what are the preferences of that. So there is a lot of work which needs to happen before these things come into reality. And I think I believe that COVID has given a nice shock for everyone to rethink some of these strategies and then start working towards that. And I believe that this transition will be accelerated in the coming months, so that we are much ready in the next year. Maybe in the 2022, we should be in a place by which we say that we are a digital first fashion brand for a lot of companies.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think this is in that sense an inflection point. The importance of data, probably people are realizing that in a big way now. And maybe on this, Abdullah, you may want to talk from your experience. Clearly at the Institute of Marangoni, you would be exposed to a lot of research in this area among the leading retailers worldwide. So, anything that you would like to share as to how technology is changing fashion retail?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge change if you look in academia or even the industry practices or what the students have been looking at in the last 5 years. That shifted a lot. So as the consumer is shifting at the moment, in the very beginning, we were talking about millennials. So millennials, they used to spend a lot. They spend a lot. And that's why brands love them, because they spend a lot when they go shopping. And then suddenly we have the huge disruption in the industry coming from a new generation, Generation Z, which is still kind of like not very well known in terms of, their approaches to fashion. And suddenly the industry started facing a massive disruption with a generation that not necessarily loyal to brands. They have different approaches when it comes to things like storytelling. And also they see fashion in a different way. And they probably tend to save more than they spend sometimes. And suddenly the industry was facing a new consumer with different perspectives happening at the same time when consumers started losing some of their millennials because the millennials were shifting towards other things. So that was one change that is reflected across research the students have been doing, but also practices of brands and the way the stores are being designed at the moment and how strategies have been shaping experience, personalization as well. The other factor is we had a massive disruption coming from a consumer that is asking for not only experience, but also asking for a personalized experience. And that has been also a big shift in research, in student work, and also in industry practices. So many of the consumers now going to the brands and saying to them, I don't want you to create the experience. I want to personalize my own experience. And all what I want from you is provide me with a technology that can do that. So that really created a massive friction in the industry between the brands that can actually do it and the other brands that they don't afford to do it, or maybe their business model is very different, their supply chain is different, and so on. So that was also a big, massive shift, which is kind of like variable number 2. Variable number 3, which everyone has been noticing as well, is that the fashion cycle has becoming shorter, the supply chain point of demand and supply becoming closer to each other. So suddenly we had a massive disruption in the supply chain. Some brands jumped quickly to change that supply chain to become more digital and smart to face that disruption. But then sustainability and personalization and experience caused also other problems because suddenly your supply chain has more than one issue now, not just a shorter buying cycle or a shorter fashion cycle. The other big shift as well is data. So data came in and provided brands with lots of opportunities in terms of knowing exactly what the consumer wants, but also creating experiential environments for consumers to react with. And this has been also a big trend in students' research and also what they do. There are topics that people used to look at in the last few years, and they are still quite strong until now. For example, personalization is coming back now to fashion in a very strong manner. It has been there for many, many years since fashion started, but people asking big questions about what's the future of experience and whether virtual is going to create experience online and stuff. But one important thing I think now, which brands are not really paying much attention to, and sometimes, you know, I got the students at the school telling me this, that there's a huge disappointment around how simple things like business model and value chain are ignored in these discussions. So there's plenty of talk about technology, plenty of talk about COVID-19, resetting of the fashion industry. But really the big question is, if you want to put technology as the core of what you do, have you actually checked if your business model works? Do you really need to change the business model? So you got lots of consultancies at the moment, from McKinsey to Bain to Deloitte. They've been publishing a lot of work around how the fashion industry is changing, which is brilliant, but there is less talk around how business models are changing and what type of business models we need for the future, how the value chain is going to change in terms of how do we make money and how do we create value for businesses. The pressures of shareholders is becoming very strong with lack of liquidity, but also the stakeholders, the consumers are asking for more sustainability and personalization. So I think we need to reverse all these discussions towards one thing, which the industry together needs to find solution with, is trying to ask big questions. What is really the business model of fashion in the future? And is it really one business model, or every brand needs to create its own business model? And I think this is where the discussions needs to shift in terms of e-commerce and also other factors to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you know, there are both sides of the story. So there are pure retailers, traditional retailers who are largely offline and often had a belief that fashion retail offline would remain the way it is, especially in certain categories like maybe luxury and so on. And then there are the e-commerce players which have disrupted the business over the last several years, several parts of the world. And I think the big differentiator in a way has been data, right? In offline, the ability to collect data is limited, by virtue of typically beyond maybe a loyalty program and who's buying what, from your sales data. And it's not easy to find out more, but very different when it comes to online. And so Abhishek, I think it'd be interesting to hear from you how you see that and how data has been critical for Myntra's success over the years, in online, and to what extent you use customer data in terms of enhancing the experience for customers online.
Yeah, Praveen, I think so. Data. And I think I'll start off by saying that we don't use all of the data we have access to, right? I think we actually do I think we can do a lot more. Let's start there, just because of the quantum of data that we do have. If I was to broadly divide the data pool into two sets, right, of actionable insights. One is just customer data. Like, for example, just to give an offline analogy, a window shopper in a mall today is data that nobody captures offline, right? But the person who browses and does not buy anything on Myntra is data that we capture, right? We actually are able to track from the time he enters our app till the time he or she leaves. What all does he do? And he's not bought anything. So this is akin to literally the window shopper in the mall, right? Now the big question is, what do you do with that, right? So for example, I could say there is this one customer who comes for the last 1 month. He's come once every day and he's not bought anything on the platform. He's just browsed, right? That's very powerful data for me to know that what has he browsed? Has he browsed one brand repeatedly? Has he added stuff to wish list? Has he actually shown signs of wanting to buy something and maybe price is the barrier, right? Or something, or he's waiting for his salary to come in, right? Usually we see a spike at the end of every month or the beginning of the next month, because salary cycles coming. A lot of our wish lists convert into sales, right? And that's why we have a wish list function, because wish list is essentially, imagine you allowing somebody to walk into a mall and fill his bag and walk out without paying for it. That's a wish list, right? Essentially. And I think those data points are helping us understand inherent signs of customer shopping behavior, which then the question is, what do we use it for? We can use it for better targeting. We can use it for the better nudges. We can actually, like for somebody who shops or browses for Levi's a lot. In fact, Levi's is one of our biggest brands on our platform, right? There are so many people who fill their wish list with Levi's jeans and wait for their salary to buy it, right? And even after that, they still have 2-3 jeans that they have not bought. What if we can inform these customers as brand loyalists? Every time Levi's launches a new jeans, they will have a higher conversion funnel, right? And that data is really, really powerful. And this is from the consumer side. The other way to also use data is on product and merchandise, right? For example, we have this brand called Moda Rapido on Myntra that we started around 4.5 years back. The specialty of this brand is that we have no designers, we have no brand managers. It's a computer, it's an AI system that looks at all trends on the platform at any given point of time, converts that into a tech pack, sends that tech pack automatically to a factory who we've got a tie-up with. The factory produces it and delivers it to our warehouse. So that entire brand today roughly is and I can give you that number, is roughly close to a 400 crore brand, right? That entire brand is run by 2 people, both of whom know nothing about product, know nothing about merchandise, know nothing about design. They are just people who know how to run the system. That's it. They keep tweaking, whatever, right? Now the difference is, can Moda Rapido ever become a brand? No. It'll never, because it does everything, right? Like if you ask me today, what is the brand ethos of Moda Rapido? I wouldn't know. Like there is no brand ethos, right? It can never be a Allen Solly or a Levi's or a Lee Cooper or a, Nike. But are they able to convert trends quickly into product? Yes. Right. And thereby, is there enough consumers out there to buy those quick trends at a great price? And the irony of this also is that because we are able to convert this quickly, our discounting on Moda Rapido is only 25%. Because we actually price it such that it comes to the right ASP either which way, right? So we kind of backward calculate all that. All of this is done on the system. So I think there are huge implications on, and some of the points that you were making, or Piyush was making on how do we shorten our season cycles, right? We are currently now planning for AW21, right? Autumn winter 21. If we take 1 year to plan for a trend that might or might not come, instead, if I can tell you this today, that this is what will sell 3 months from now, if you can turn it around, then you win the market, right? Because I think the biggest conundrum that I've at least seen, and I've come from the offline world as well, is that fashion is the only term in the world that has something called fast fashion. There is no other industry in the world that has fast as a prefix to it, right? But we are actually one of the slowest industries, right? And in all the good ways, like we take a lot of effort into designing our products. We take a lot of effort into understanding trends. But if we were really that fast, then we wouldn't take 18 months to get to market, right? So I think that is the biggest innovation that we should use data for, is to really crunch those timelines. If we can use that data effectively, I think that brand or that company will be king. The last one point I had also was that today on data, there is a huge amount of data that actually lies in the offline world that we probably don't leverage very well on the online world. What I mean by that is, for example, there are X number of people who walk into a brand store every day across the country, right? The same X number of people go onto a Myntra or a Flipkart or any of the other platforms as well to shop. While you are very, very particular about not losing share in a mall, like if you ask brand A about brand B, he will say, I'm very, very particular that my customer should only come to my store in a mall, right? And not go to my competitor store. And they're right next to each other. Online, that doesn't exist. So online, for example, a UCB customer might be buying a USPA product and UCB doesn't know about it. He's losing share right there, right? And USPA customer might be buying a UCB product and USPA doesn't know about it. The ability to be able to provide or use offline data to target customers online is also extremely powerful, right? You have the data of all customers who walk into your store, right? They walk in for whatever reason, they've given in their email ID and their phone numbers. If you do a overlap of that customer, is he available on a Myntra? Because Myntra has all of your brand stock as well. It's the same stock, right? Is he on Myntra? Is he buying my brand? Is he not buying my brand? Why is he not buying my brand? Are we not showing him the right stuff? So I think a lot of those cross-pollination opportunities also exist today, which is another huge opportunity area.
So maybe good time to bring Pankaj in terms of, what do you see, Pankaj, in terms of the data that you would like to have from marketplaces like Myntra, which would help you in your decisions around, customer engagement, merchandising, maybe even supply chain, right? Especially as things go hyperlocal. So any thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, so there are two or three or four things that we are working on. One is, some of the parts, for example, which Abdullah was talking about, right? So there is a new consumer who comes in for a very different reason, right? For some of them, sustainability is very important. For some of them, what collaborations and what stories do you have around that, which is very important. For some of them, they're just looking at a type of a product. What we realize that all of, as we work with marketplaces, as we work with our own site, these are things which give us a lot of insight as to what engages consumer more and what engages consumer less. And there are different sets of consumers that engage very differently. For some, sustainability is very important. And as a brand, we believe very strongly about sustainability, and we've done a lot of work. There's a lot of work that we've done on collaborations. I mean, today, if you see, we collaborate with, we have a lot of collaboration lines that are out there, and we see there are consumers who interact with that. And both the offline and the online world, that is there. I think some of the parts that we also see in terms of how data flows out is, for example, on our own site, and sometimes we work with partners like Myntra, is things like on our site, there is something called a null search. Right? Consumer searches for that on your site and just does not throw up any search like that. Actually, we go through a null search very closely. And what we have seen is that it has been a very interesting insights we've got out of it. See, in fashion, we've all call products in a certain way because that's how product development or merchandising and so on so happens. But sometimes what we forget is consumers call those products by a very different nomenclature or set of words or concatenation of words, all of that. So when we look at that data of null searches, right, we've actually been able to go back and work on the content because there is no other way than to tell the consumer better that if this is what you were looking for, this is how it will come up in a search. So this is it's an iterative process, and we've realized that over a period of time, the quality of our engagement with the consumers and how they convert has improved as the quality of the content has gone up. So data has played a very, very big role. I think there is one part of the data which where I would say we've started on the journey, but we are, and it's a long journey, which is what we call is a single view of the customer. So what I mean by a single view of the customer is that we have a large retail network. We've got our significant business online, right? As Abhishek was mentioning, right? We don't have a one view of that consumer. And we've been trying to build an approach where we can identify the consumer, at least to start with, who is going online, who is going offline. If it is the same consumer, how do you make their journey and their buying experience, their discovery simpler, and thus lead to finally their purchase at a channel of the choice. And I think this is a journey. It's easier said than done because there's a lot of work which goes into, and Piyush will probably tell you that the amount of data that generates, if you just wanted to do between our own site and our stores, and to have just a single view of customers where consumers can buy online, go back to a store and exchange it, or vice versa. I mean, there are various parts that you could do that. So for us, that data, that single view of customer or the single view of consumer is something that is a journey that we embarked upon, and it will get richer and richer as we go along.
Right. On one other aspect, clearly you talked about customer engagement online and in store. I think one other way, today, which is obviously very popular, is how we engage with customers on media, particularly digital media. So how has Levi's been doing that, and how do you see that changing?
So digital media is again a method of communication that we reach out to consumers and tell them our stories, tell them about our product, right? And some of the things that I talked to you about, right? Things like sustainability, collaborations, new fits, new trends in how clothes are getting worn, how people are creating ensembles that they're wearing for different occasions, right? Coming to Abdullah was talking about personalization, right? So some of the personalizations today, if you walk into a store in, for example, in Bangalore, Indiranagar, or in Mumbai and Linking Road, we have something called a tailor shop. It's a concept that we have where you can go there, take your pair of jeans, take your trucker, and you can customize it the way you want. You personalize it the way you want, not customize. Actually, it's a personalization which people want it to have their own mark on that product, their own way of, saying that this is mine. I mean, you could go there and you could, print a T-shirt which says Mumbai or, Bandra or, Indiranagar, whatever it is. So there is so much that you could do with it. You could put your name on a T-shirt with a Levi's logo. You could do that. That's a part of the personalization. So these are things that we communicate on the social media. And what it does is it generates traffic to various channels, to our online partners like Myntra, which we know where they are going there, and to our own sites, to our own stores. Both still have challenges on data in terms of being able to identify somebody who's seen something in our site when have they gone to a store. But these are things that will get better as data starts to come together and that amorphous data starts to crystallize into a very, very clear consumer face of a consumer to us.
Channel, and how is that? Are you seeing anything in the Western world in what's happening?
I think as omnichannel has been there for some time now, and what we've been seeing is basically just evolution of that concept. So moving from a functional omnichannel to a more specialized one. So I think omnichannel has been in the industry for long. We're gonna be seeing new versions of it as we go. But I think one of the big things which I would be seeing the next step for omnichannel is moving from just being a functional factor to a more smart omnichannel. So if I include the word smart to omnichannel, then I'm talking about new things here. So things like the ability of the brand to communicate with the consumer online and offline, but also at the same time, it has some sort of like a predictive factor that is driven by data, for example. So as you introduce data and technology to business models of companies, these omnichannels are becoming powerful, not only places of where the consumer can engage with the brand, but also it's a place where the brand can think about their next product offering through the engagement with the omnichannel, but also it's about planning for what comes in the future. So I think smart omnichannel, where the key focus is the experience before the product, might be some versions we will be seeing in the industry. We started seeing that anyway. Some consumers are going to the stores for the experience, and then maybe they will buy the product while they go, maybe they won't. So I think the versions of omnichannels we're going to be seeing where the product might become secondary, and the experience becomes first. And I think this is a nightmare for many brands where they are still at not that level of maturity in terms of what they want to do and whether this really contradicts with their philosophy of how they do retail. So some brands already going to the maximum levels with this, where data is helping them get to that. But some other brands, they are too cautious about developing that type of omnichannel because it requires lots of capital, but also changing a whole philosophy and ideology of how do you do fashion in general. So in terms of brands, I mean, I know data, for example, inside stores have been helping at the back offices of stores now. You know, data is everywhere on screens where people are looking at real-time information about conversion rates, about engagement, about heat maps inside the stores. So as we moved from a physical store to a smart store, omnichannel is also shifting in that sense. And I think omnichannel becoming more powerful because now we are using it not only to engage, but also to think about other things in the future, such as, Abhishek was mentioning earlier, that it's not only about, the window shopping conversion, but also about many other things in terms of how we do well as a store retail management in general. So I think we can use omnichannels now to gain more information bigger than just a relationship with the consumer.
Right. Thanks, Abdullah. So I think we had covered, I think, most of the areas that we had planned to as part of this session. Maybe let me pick up some questions. There are some questions in the planning. I don't think we will do all, but let me pick up a few here. So yeah, I think there's one question. Is digital the only way forward and will stay for a long time? It's a question from Anil Nagar from New Delhi. And if you want to pick that up, maybe Abdullah, you can talk about that.
Definitely not. Definitely is digital won't be the only way. I think there is some sort of like a diverse opinion in the industry right now. Is digital really a tool or is it a transformation? And I think this is where the discussion is shifting. And it depends really on the business. It depends on your business model and your philosophy of how you want to do things. If you are at a stage where you believe digital can be the driver of your value, then obviously for you, it's becoming a way of life. But if you are a brand that you believe digital is just a tool which you are going to use when you want and how you want without destroying the DNA and what you do as a brand, then also that would be an option. So I think the future is going to be about more evidence of digital transformation that I've been seeing in the industry for some time now, but also it's more confusion about what technology can do to us. And you can't imagine how much technology is causing problems for many brands at the moment who are just getting into the train of implementing it without really changing the culture of the company. And hence, we have been saying lately, we've been seeing the students, for example, coming up with lots of ideas around there is a huge danger for brands to just do technology without actually knowing what does it do for them. Some of the students at Instituto Marangoni have been interviewing, for example, lots of tech experts, and some of the results they've been getting from this research is that lots of tech experts has been saying to them, we get lots of fashion brands, including the very top brands, without mentioning any names, asking them to do a lot of technology for them without actually knowing if this is going to really help them or not. And the technology companies going back to the fashion brands and saying, let's do it in another way. You start with the problem and I will check if I can do something for you. So I think this is going to be a very important topic and it's such a good question, but definitely is not the way forward. It depends on how you see it. Is it a tool or is it a business model of generating value?
Right. I think it's an interesting way putting that. I mean, so is digital a tool that everybody will use, and or is it going to transform? And I think next question is again around similar lines. It is our marketplace is the only answer for online purchase. Can a company not market its products and engage customers through its own website? Question from Mahalakshmi.
So again, I think I go back to my earlier question is that you have to have a reason. You have to have a method to reach your consumers, right? And I think that's the most important. what provides better accessibility to your consumer, right? If you have your own site and you also are a marketplace, I think most people always think of some of this as an or question rather than and question. I always say that always look at multiple, each channel is a way to reach and it should always be an and. Coming to the part, but when you do that, ask yourself as a question, as a seller of products, a seller of a brand, what will my site do and what will the marketplace do? And how will they complement each other? Will they be different? Will they solve a different consumer or will they give a different consumer experience in each of the different places, right? And if those answers are clear, then you will have both and they will serve their own purpose. It is with that lens when you approach this question, the answers become very. I mean, if you need your own site, you have to have a good reason why this site should exist, right? If you work in a marketplace, work with the marketplace to understand what is it that they will with them that you'll be able to do for your consumers. So,
before we wind up, and maybe Abdullah, I can start with you.
Yes, sure. So when it comes to the future of e-commerce, I think for me it's just 3 words: business model, digital transformation, culture, and value. So.
Thank you. Piyush?
Yeah, so I think we've talked about technology, and I think one of the key messages that I feel is that technology for the sake of technology is not going to change anything. You have to look at the reason of it and make sure that you do it with data and the customer at the center of it.
Thanks, Piyush. Pankaj?
I firmly believe that we should put the consumer at the center of all that you're doing, because that is the reason why we all exist. Data, technology are all enablers to serve the consumer better, right? You can use data and technology to serve them very well in your retail stores, whether it serves them very well online or any other channel that you operate. But still you don't have the consumer at the center of all conversations, right? All of this has very little value that you can generate for your business.
Very well said. Abhishek, your final comments?
So, I think if I was to just break this up into where I think we are today and where I think we're headed, is the what and the why and the how, right? I think the why is clearly the consumer. The consumer keeps shifting. They are the reason we exist as businesses. They're the reason fashion exists. And if we don't adapt to the consumer, then we are going to lose this race. That's the why. The how is really data. And I think, a lot of the points that we spoke about today is that I don't think the availability of data is the issue, but the utilization of data and the right insight and doing something about it and breaking that up into actionables is something that most companies today have a long way to go, right? Including, the big e-commerce ones. The what is really the ability to provide a seamless experience across online and offline. And it should become so seamless that it shouldn't matter where the consumer of your brand or of your retail channel is, right? At what point he is he offline? Is he online? Is it day? Is it night? Is it weekday or weekend? Is he looking for something or is he just browsing? It shouldn't matter. It should just become one seamless experience for the consumer, and that's the what. So I think a long way to go on the how to use data to provide the what. The why is actually very, very clear, and it's always been the same why. All I can say is it's almost like a rebirth for me, at least, in terms of where e-commerce could go or could take this journey from here. So exciting times.
Thanks, Abhishek, and great. I think we had a very interesting discussion. Hope all of you took away from it a lot, which I certainly did as part of being part of a retail company. And I look forward to you catching up again in the future. Thank you very much to all panelists and all people who are attending this session.